Hi there, it's Catrin at 3Ps. This video is about the advice from our nutritionist Maia Lloyd about what you eat for dinner. If you hadn't realised already, we have a new series of books on Amazon which are to help you lean up for summer. We don't believe in the sort of 3 shakes, starvation, extreme low calorie way of operating because it may get the weight off initially, but the weight will come back in spades and you'll also feel terrible. So we went to Maia Lloyd, who's a nutritionist in London who has 5 weight loss clinics, and we helped her adapt her program specifically for those who wanted to lean up for summer. So those books are now on Amazon, and you'll find the links in the notes to this video. But having talked to her, I thought it'd be useful just to go through what her broad advice is around your dinner, your supper, whatever you may call it. So I've got here my notes, and I thought I'd just talk to you about what we talked about, just so you get a sense of, if you are looking to drop some weight or looking to maintain your leanness, what you do around supper. So let's just start with her first piece of advice. Right, her first piece of advice was eat early. Now that's one you may well have heard about in lots of contexts. You're eating to fuel your body. If actually you're eating late, you haven't got enough time to work off that food, and it will be stored in your fat cells. So I know a lot of people, particularly if you have a stressful job, will save up your calories in effect until you get home and then have a big dinner and relax. Well, if you're using food to de-stress, that tells you, or should tell you, that maybe food is not the right means to de-stress, and what would be a better coping strategy would be to take food out of the equation and find other ways to de-stress. So for example, doing things like guided meditation. So download something from iTunes that is around relaxation, sit there with some headphones and relax that way. That is a much better way to cope than to sit with a huge plate of food. As I said, Maia's advice is not to eat too late, and her advice would be to eat by 8 in the evening. Depends really what time you go to bed, but you need to leave at least a couple of hours before you go to bed. Now for some people, if you're quite active or if you have difficulty sleeping, you may say, well, I need something last thing because I can't sleep if I'm hungry. Now her advice on that is that's fine. What she would suggest is you need to encourage sleep, first of all, by maybe at your dinner eating something which includes what's called tryptophan. Tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin, which is the sleep-inducing and happy hormone in the brain. And the things that are high in tryptophan would be things like poultry, so chicken or turkey, and dairy, so cheese is a classic. Cheese is already known to be sleep-inducing. Also, having that with a little bit of sugar, because sugar helps the hormones to bridge the gap in the brain. So maybe half a banana, some grapes, some sort of fruit sugar as well will help you sleep. The next question we have, or I asked her, was what about food and muscle building? So if you're looking to build muscle and you're looking therefore at what the structure of your dinner should be, what is the best thing to be eating at night? Now one of the gyms I go to regularly in London, which is in Arnos Grove, which you may or may not know, is called Dr. Zach's. It's a fantastic weights gym, so shout out to Dr. Zach because it's a great gym. Just if you're in London, you live in North London, go and have a look. It's got the most amazing weights machines. And Dr. Zach was Mr. Cyprus. He's still competing at a senior level. So hi, Dr. Zach, if you're watching. One of the things there is once you've trained, they've actually got a kitchen, and so guys will often pick up their chicken on the way back. Now, that's fine, but you need to balance that chicken particularly with some vegetables. First of all, because for your own bowel health, in terms of bowel cancer, it's really important to make sure that you're eating enough fibre. So if you're just, as a part of a bodybuilding diet, just eating, say, chicken and rice, which is, not uncommon for bodybuilders, you will find that you need to balance that with some green vegetables in particular. Another of my friends is a physique model. So I know not all my friends are physique models, but I've got 2 that are. One of them is, and he is, competes at a very high level. When I first got to know him, we were training together to become personal trainers, and he was 22, and he in the afternoons would fall asleep in class. And it became a joke that we'd turn around and he'd be fast asleep. And we started talking about his diet, and it became apparent that his diet consisted of chicken and rice. He would have something very carby first thing in the morning, so he would have what's called a malt loaf, which is a very fast carb heavy trans fat nightmare food, really. You'd have that first thing, and that would be straight after training, and that was probably just to give himself some energy, and then he would have nothing straight through to lunchtime. Then he'd have a piece of broiled chicken and rice, white rice. Then he'd have nothing all afternoon. Then he'd have a piece of broiled chicken and white rice. Now, that may be great for keeping, at least you get the simplicity with that, but number one, white rice is a fast carb, so you're going to give yourself unstable blood sugar, which is going to affect your mood and your energy levels. But number two, you've got no green vegetables there, and it's really, really important, as I said, for bowel health and to avoid bowel cancer, that you make sure you have your veg. Veg are minimal from a calorie perspective, but massively important from a health perspective, because vegetables contain these things called micronutrients in them, which are what fire a lot of the metabolic processes in your body, and certainly help with things like fighting infection. You know, people who do sport at a very high level, whether it be bodybuilding or marathon running or whatever it may be, often are susceptible to infection, because they are training at a very high level. It's extremely important, if you want to feel well, that you try to bolster your defences, and one of the ways you do that is eating lots of vegetables and eating to some extent fruit, although I'll talk in a minute about sugar stability, because Maia and I talked about that. So in terms of what you should be eating, in terms of before or after you train, as I said, protein is great, a bit of slow carb, not white rice, brown rice is much better, baked sweet potato is even better. Make sure obviously your protein is lean. Try and work in some oily fish, because that's good, first of all, for calming inflammation in your joints, and if you're lifting quite a lot of weight, then you may well have inflammation in your joints. It's great, as I said, for tryptophan, for increasing your ability to sleep. And then make sure you have some good fats in there, so things like avocado are incredibly important. As again, oily fish is fantastic. Flax seeds, you can add those to shakes or put those on salads. Coconut oil is great. Coconut oil is interesting because it's the only oil that when you heat it to smoking temperature does not turn to trans fat. So even olive oil, if you heat it to a smoking temperature, which you will do if you're, for example, frying or stir frying, some of it will turn to trans fat. Now, trans fat is what stores around your waist, so you want to avoid trans fat at all costs. Now, most people think as long as you avoid, packaged goods like crisps and chips and pastries, that you'll avoid trans fat. Well, as I said, when you're frying anything to a smoking temperature, you will end up with trans fat, except if you use coconut oil. So it's a magic oil to use. I unfortunately are allergic. I'm allergic to coconut, so I can't use coconut oil. But if you can, then it's one that's really good. It's worth you getting used to using, because it's really good for any sort of stir frying that you're doing. Okay, so that was the next question I asked, was, how do you eat for muscle building? We've talked about that. The next thing we talked about was, which I asked, what were the particular sort of kitchen gadgets that she recommended that you have? And she mentioned just two. The first was the humble potato peeler. She said that obviously you can use it for peeling potatoes, but in terms of you making things like salads more interesting, using a potato peeler to create strips of vegetables like carrot and courgette and cucumber makes your salads more interesting, and just jazzes things up, and it's as simple as having a potato peeler. So have one of those in your cupboard. And the second thing she mentioned, before we get on to things like juices, was the slow cooker, or called in America the crock pot, or we call it a slow cooker in the UK. She said, and I agree with this, that it's obviously amazing for roasting meat, because you don't have to add any oil, and the meat comes up incredibly tender. So you can put a whole chicken in a crock pot, for example, put it on in the morning when you come back from work, it's ready to go. You can use all sorts of cuts of meat in there. You can even make healthy porridge in a crock pot, so they're really, really worth having. In some of her recipes, she has actually got a crock pot porridge in her breakfast book. So if you look at the notes below this video, you'll see the reference to the breakfast book, and have a look at that, because that's a really excellent recipe for making healthy porridge, so porridge that isn't going to disrupt your blood sugar. As I said, you can also do things like whole chickens in the crock pot, so they're a good cheap way of cooking really excellent meat. So those are the two basic ones she talked about, and then we talked a bit about juicers and blenders, and where we come out to this is pretty much on the same level, which is that you probably need a blender if you can afford one. If you can't afford a big blender with a motor, then you can afford a small hand blender. That's just for making things like soups if you want to, and for making things like hummus, which if you made your own, it's far better than what you get in the shops, because the stuff in the shops has got sugar in. Whereas if you make your own, then it's absolute power food, fantastic, very high in protein, great in the ability to stabilise your hormones, so a good one. And if you look in the snacks book, which she's written, again, I'll put the notes below this video, she gives you recipes for all sorts of homemade dips that you can have as snacks, because one of the things that she says is that you shouldn't go a long extended period without eating. It's much more important to break your meals down. I think a lot of you, if you are exercising, will be used to the idea of, you know, smaller, more frequent meals. Well, she's in agreement with that, and she suggests that you need to have a snack certainly mid-afternoon, and her suggestion is either nuts, which in the snack book she spices up, so they're not just plain nuts. And then in relation to dip, she gives you all sorts of dips that you can have with whatever vegetables you choose. So having some sort of blender is quite important for the sort of snack recipes. The other thing is whether or not you want to have a juicer or a blender. In her breakfast recipes, there are some recipes for a shake. So there's, for example, one called a strawberry shortcake shake, and there's reference also to juiced drinks. And she and I agree that in terms of juicing, that is a fantastic way to get more vitamins and particularly the enzymes from vegetables into your system. But you need to avoid over-dependence on juicing from fruit, because fruit is high sugar. Which brings me on to the next subject, which she's very hot on, which is if you want to manage your weight, it's really important that you manage your blood sugar, and that applies to dinner and to all of your meals. So when it comes to dinner, it's important that you don't give yourself a huge whack of carbohydrate, and you don't, for example, think, oh, well, I won't have a normal meal. What I'll have is I'll juice. Juice is great, but a juice made of vegetables with a small amount of fruit. I'll give you a suggestion for one that's actually in the breakfast book, but you can drink it any time of day, which is a green juice, where you would juice a cucumber, a lettuce, so either a sort of romaine lettuce or a baby gem lettuce, a lime, some kale or some spinach, so 3 or 4 handfuls of that, and a small apple or half a large apple. That is the amount of fruit you need. You don't need any more than that. Juice that together and have that as a drink, because that is really, really healthy. A juice which is made of, you know, heavy on the tropical fruits like pineapple and mango, is just extremely high in sugar. And what that will do for you, whether you have it for dinner or for breakfast, is it'll shoot your blood sugar up. You'll get a whoosh of energy, and then you'll get an energy low, because the body will react. You'll release insulin, you'll take the blood out, you'll take the sugar out of your blood, and your blood sugar will crash, and you'll end up with this horrendous sort of seesaw effect where you have a juice and then within an hour you're hungry and you're craving food or drink again, and you'll need to eat because your blood sugar will be so low. And the result, and you also with your emotions, is that you'll just be very tense and very strung out. So juice is great, fruit is not great. Stick to vegetables, small amount of fruit. In terms of dinner, her own view is that juicing for dinner is not the way you want to go. You need to have a proper meal. One of the things that she says is that, you know, food is meant to be social. Food is not going to the toilet where you do it alone. Food should be eaten together. It is about connecting with people. And if you become obsessional about food and you create all these faddy food habits where you're eating weird foods or you're only juicing, you cut yourself off socially, and that's no way to live, and it's no way to get balance in your life. And there's a great bodybuilder, an old bodybuilder from the 70s called Mike Mentzer, who was a very intelligent guy, and he one of the things he said was, you know, when he was bodybuilding, he was a very senior level. He said, you know, he said I train early, and then I get on with my life. And I think that's where you want to get to. So with food and with training, this needs to be part of your life. It mustn't dominate your life. And that's what Maia Lloyd says, is, you know, food is social. And so her programs are about food that you can eat, but other people can share with you. It's not punishment food. It's not weird, wacky food that no one likes the look of. It's normal stuff. You know, for dinner, it'll be a piece of fish, a piece of chicken. It'll be something like a chili. These are foods that everyone can eat together. The difference of what makes them foods for weight loss is the way she balances the protein with the fats and the carbohydrates. So she's careful about which carbohydrates you eat. She makes sure that in terms of the quantities, everything is balanced. So that's how she, you know, gets her clients lean, and that's how you're going to get lean. The next thing we talked about was let me just have a look. She said, the major point she said with her clients, what she's often having to say to them, above all, is that don't use food as the way to inject pleasure into your life. Now that may sound rather sort of, sackcloth and ashes. Food is fuel. It is to a very large extent, but what she's trying to say is don't invest food with emotional succor or emotional help. That is not what food's for. Food is there to facilitate your body, your metabolism, your health, to be letting your body operate at optimum levels, but it cannot be a replacement for friends, for happiness, for interest. If you've got a boring job and you come home at night and you therefore want, you compensate for that with a meal, you need to look at that and find other ways to make yourself feel good. And I'm not suggesting here that you turn to alcohol or drugs, because they have the same trap as food. If you are relying on a thing to make you happy, whatever that may be, it could be shopping, it could be sex, it could be food, it could be drugs, that is not sustainable. And sooner or later you will need more and more of that to get to the point where you feel it's actually having an effect. Much better to think of positive ways to make yourself feel good. Now, obviously, exercise is a classic example of something which can make you feel good, that is healthy and is life sustaining and supporting. So for the majority of you watching this, you will already be using exercise as a way to support your positive feelings about yourself. Just keep on doing that. Let food sit as a natural adjunct to that. It's about making you feel better about yourself, and that means eating well. But talking to Maia Lloyd, she said that the major issue that a lot of her clients have is they just invest food with so much additional stuff that when she says to them, I want you to make these changes, even though they've come to her and they're paying to see her, they will say, I couldn't possibly do such and such. And that's a very rigid way. And that's, again, investing food with more than it's just food. They're investing food with sustenance, with comfort, with love, whatever it may be. What she says in relation to that is when she gets a client who takes that view with her, she just looks at them, she smiles, and she says, let's embrace the possibility of change. And then she just leaves that in the air. And she says that some of her clients get it and some of her clients don't. And it's difficult for her to know which ones are going to get it, because she just has to wait and see. Some of them do extremely well. Some of them struggle a bit to start with until they get into the groove and realise that they don't need to use food for anything other than being healthy and investing in themselves, which is what a nutrition should be about. So that's what Maia had to say about dinner. I'm going to do a couple of other videos about the other meals of the day, just to explain really what the ethos of the books is and give you a taster of what's in the books. As I said, I'll put the links for the books below. They're only 99p or 99 cents, but they are packed with fantastic recipes and really good advice. And they are from someone who does know what they're talking about and isn't going to suggest that you go and spend a week running up a hill on no food, which is what happens when you go on a boot camp. As a personal trainer, I fundamentally disagree with that approach. I think it's an extreme approach. You're losing muscle if you're doing that. I'm in the opposite camp, which is healthy eating. Be intelligent about how you eat to try and build muscle and lose fat, but take it in the round. So one last point I wanted to say from Maia, which she said to me was, occasionally you'll come off the wagon. It's not that important. It's not the end of the world. If you want a bacon sandwich, if you want that piece of cake, this is her saying, have it. Don't beat yourself up. Enjoy it, and then just get back on the program the next meal. Which I think is brilliant advice. Don't ever get so intense that it becomes the end of the world because you have a piece of cake. That surely cannot be what life is about. So that's me about to sign off. Say thank you very much for listening to what I have to say. Please enjoy the books. If you do get any of the books, I'd be so grateful if you reviewed them on Amazon. Amazon reviews obviously is what will make or break the series. And I do think this series really deserves to be well read because the advice is so great. All the details are in the notes below. Make sure to give me a review like this of the video. I hope you do like it. Give me any feedback. If you want to contact me direct, then get me at hello@3pspublishing.com. It's hello@3pspublishing.com. I'd be delighted to answer any questions. As I said, very happy to take any feedback. I did a previous video on here which answered some questions on our current 3 whole body workouts on this channel. So I do videos to answer questions. So if you send me a good question, you might find I do a video on it. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. It's been a privilege. I hope it's been helpful, and I will see you soon. Bye.